Long before his name was on the side of this building, Wally Parks was still a hot rodder. Not only was he president of the NHRA, he was the editor of Hot Rod magazine. You want to talk about a guy that didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk. And in 1957, this was his ride. And Greg, I'm actually a little bit confused. It's a 57 Plymouth Savoy, but on the side of the car it says 1960.
And on the back of the roof it says suddenly. The reason for that is in 1957, Chrysler Corporation had an ad campaign talking about how futuristic their cars were, and the tag was suddenly it's 1960. So Wally said, perfect, that's it. It's going to be called Suddenly, and the numbers are going to be 1960.
So this car rolled off the Plymouth assembly plant, and Wally and a group of hot rodders did something pretty cool with it.
Yes, they did. A group of old-time hot rodders, Tony Capanna, had just built an engine for a guy named Harry Duncan, who was a racer in all kinds of classes at the lakes and Bonneville and drag racing. And he had this pretty cool injected Hemi that he didn't have anything to do with. Telling Wally about it, and Wally had the light bulb went off, and they called their contacts at Chrysler and got a 57 Plymouth. And in about 2 weeks got it ready to go to Daytona Beach and run on the sand.
That's not lost on anybody. 2 weeks. What did they have to do to this car in that short period of time?
Number one, they had to fit a Hemi in it, which it was never designed for. They had to do the roll bar, the fuel system, cooling system. It actually had water tanks in the trunk and so forth. And get it all ready to roll and get it lettered and haul it to Daytona Beach behind Ray Brock's 54 Oldsmobile.
Flat towing it, no less.
Flat towed.
And from my understanding, once they got to Daytona, they weren't done. They still were going to do some aerodynamic headlight covers.
Right.
There was a full belly pan on that. And you mentioned Ray Brock, who was also another true hot rod legend, but it wasn't just Wally and Ray Brock. The group of hot rodders that worked on this is an all-star list.
Right. It's Bill Likes, who was a big-time Edelbrock guy, Brock, Tony Capanna, Willie Garner, which was the other half of Wilcap. Bob Hedman himself built the headers for it. That took quite an effort to snake headers for a Hemi in this 57 Plymouth chassis.
So they go to Bonneville. They're going to race on the sand, speed trials, both directions, and they're going up against not only a lot of well-financed teams, but a lot of the factory cars as well.
Right. At Daytona Beach, there was an experimental class, which this car fit in because it didn't come from the factory with that Hemi in it. The first time Wally ever got in, it went down the sand and went 158 miles an hour, so they were pretty pumped.
And before that time, it would be fair to say Wally had about 3 minutes of driving time in this car?
Pretty much, yeah. They found a Plymouth dealer in Daytona where they could work on the car, and they did that and drove it around a little bit, but not much.
How did our team of hot rodders eventually stack up against what was a lot of well-financed and best teams in the country?
Did very well. They did 166 miles an hour and beat the factory cars. Experimental T-Bird eventually went faster, but they had the record. The interesting part about setting the record at 166 miles an hour is it had to be certified that it was gasoline only. And Big Bill France, who was the founder of NASCAR, had to be the guy that made the determination. And he stuck his finger in the moon tank and smelled it and said, yep, that's gasoline. And that was the tech check.
Little less technical than it might be today. So actually the car wasn't done after it ran on the sand.
No, then they brought it home and decided to go to Bonneville, which was in August. And they got another Hemi supplied by Dean Moon and built a fuel motor to take this car to go to Bonneville. By the time they got going on the salt, got it all worked out, Wally and Robert E. Peterson and Tom Medley had to leave to go to Oklahoma City for the 57 Nationals. They told Brock to go or blow, and he did.
He did both.
He did both.
He went and he bent, right?
Yes. He went 183 miles an hour, which at the time was the world's fastest stock-bodied sedan. I mean, that's pretty impressive. You think this big, giant car going 183 miles an hour is pretty impressive.
And when they got to Bonneville, they weren't allowed to run the fairings on the headlamps or the belly pan.
Belly pan.
To push this brick at 183 miles an hour on the salt, and unlike a lot of cars in the museum, this is not the original car. We're not 100% sure where it ended up, but it actually had a little bit of an interesting life after it set those records.
Yeah, Howard Johansson of Howard's Cams bought it, and I guess several members of his family drove it on the street, and it's been lost to time where it ended up. Jim Travis, who was a longtime Lakes racer, Bonneville racer, and LA Roadster member, and Wally asked him to recreate Suddenly. And Jim found a 57 Plymouth and went through the whole deal. Well, it turns out it was a two-door sedan. It was the wrong body style. So they ran it like that for a while. And for his 90th birthday, Ray Brock found this hardtop body and gave it to Wally, and Travis and his gang switched over the body. Can you imagine doing a body swap on a 57 Plymouth?
So 1957, Wally Parks is already in deep with the NHRA. They're running national events. They've become a big sanctioning body. But he was a hot rodder at heart, and he took a team of like-minded people out to Daytona Beach and showed the high-financed and factory teams that a small group of guys from Southern California with a lot of determination and mechanical know-how could leave with the big number one.